Last month or something thought that the title, How to Kill Your Board, was my idea, and I'm refusing. I'm absolutely not my idea. But I think if we'd had another session on how to be a better board, there'd be about 3 of us in this room. So we're glad to have almost 50 of us in this room to hear about ways to improve our board, but how to kill your board. So
you're sure we shouldn't do that, right?
Well, I don't know. We're going to find out. Amanda Edwards is the, I have to read your name, tell you again, where you chapter executive for the American Red Cross. She's a big wig in the American Red Cross. But she has been a colleague of mine and for me for years. And remember when Amanda was at the Literacy Council? Yeah, that was a while ago. And is one of the greatest ladies in fundraising. She's a mentor to so many of us. And we're very, very blessed to have her in Western North Carolina because she will answer questions. She'll partner with you when you have difficult challenges to face. And she is a discreet woman, so no one will ever know that you called. So it's a pleasure to introduce our former president of this chapter, Amanda Edwards.
Button should be up.
All right.
You have to hold it very close to your mouth, though.
I really don't like a microphone. I hope you can hear me without it. I thought you were my friend, Alex.
Not anymore.
All right, so I'm going to try this here.
Amanda, just a little closer. There you go.
It really does feel like I'm going to eat it. I am so excited to be here with y'all today, and really this is not about Amanda, but it is really about these phenomenal ladies that have agreed to serve on this panel and be really honest and forthcoming with you about their experience not only with boards, but serving on boards as well. We have with us today Ruth Birge from United Way of Henderson County. Kimerly Hinkelman with Pardee Hospital Foundation. Debbie Rice, who is our president-elect of AFP. She is currently the business development manager with Boys Arnold and Company. She's going to be our and Allison with Children First Communities and Schools. I really did ask some gentlemen to join us on this panel, and they all turned me down. I think they were scared of joining this group of folks. So without further ado, we will get started. I really have to go on, though, again about the title of How to Kill Your Board. I don't know where it came from. It seemed like an easy thing to blame on Annie last week, our program vice president. Really, to me, when we talked about this, it's a very tongue-in-cheek title that, yes, we all know our boards can absolutely make us crazy, make us want to jump off the cliff, but we know we need them. We have to have them. And from where I stand, I'm seeing more and more organizations relying on their boards to fundraise and to truly fundraise, not just write a thank you note and make a thank you call, but to be our partners as we move forward in raising funds for our organizations. So how I see this today is, yeah, sure, we may want to kill them, as I just said, but what do we do as executive directors and development directors that make them want to kill us too? And what can we do better to work with our boards? And how are we, truly, how are we killing them in what we do and do not do to make them excellent board members? So what I want to do is kind of break this down into a couple of sections here, and I may cut some of you all off as I ask questions, but we'll just start and just really go from here. I want you all to talk about how you recruit board members. How are you training your board members? All right, we will start with Ruth.
Okay, I get to eat there. This isn't really working.
I don't think
It's
it's
not really working well.
It's fine.
You have to hold it about an inch from your
Oh,
mouth.
trust me, I can make this work, and we won't need this. Sorry, Alex.
All right, you win.
How do you recruit board members? You recruit board members by what skills and talent that you need. We at Henderson County, we recruit not only demographically but geographically because we represent the entire county. So you have to do that. Training starts from before you ever ask anybody to be a board member. You talk with them about what it is that you do. Is it a passion? Is it something they can do? Is it something they want to do? So that's it. Okay, here, you try.
That was all you're going to say?
That's it. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
We could hear you.
is it working? No. Is it working? No. It's not working. Well, I'll just, the first thing I need to say is one of my board members is sitting to my right. So
Danger.
I'm going to be a little careful about this.
She's also one of my board members, be honest.
Okay, then. I guess one of the things I would say is I learned a long time ago not to be timid or apologetic or downplay what the role is when you're recruiting somebody. Because I think so often we find ourselves saying, oh, it won't take much time. You know, it's just 1 month, one meeting a month, and I think we do ourselves a huge disservice if we start at that point. I also spent a lot of... Now I'm going to sit.
You didn't know you were supposed to.
I actually develop a pretty complicated grid so that when I'm recruiting a person, I'm recruiting them to a position, if you will, that I know what spot they play, whether they're an officer or whether they're a good chairperson of a particular committee. But I really have a place in mind for that person. So in addition to being honest about the huge responsibility a board member has, both from a governance point of view and from a fiscal point of view, I mean, let's face it, those are two of the most important things our board members do. And they're accountable for that. And I think, you know, for me, when I'm interviewing and talking to somebody about coming on the board and they say to me, do you have D&O insurance? I love that person because they're already thinking about their responsibility as a board member. But I think just being really honest from the get-go and be specific about what you're going to ask them to do, I think that's helpful.
So I would agree with everything that's been said, but I would also add that I try to recruit from within as much as possible. And when somebody comes to me and says, we've got a great person for your organization, usually the first thing I say is, well, let's find a committee where they fit. Because that way they're able to know, learn more about the organization, and I'm able to learn more about them. If they're on our finance committee and they're not showing up to meetings, or they're always late, or they're hard to communicate with, then I probably do not want them on our board. And so I'm always trying to bring people up and be real clear about this is our path up to the board. I've had some board members just randomly put forth names that have been awesome board members, and then I've had that also happen where they've not been as awesome. So I'm always trying to say, let's recruit from within when possible. And I think being honest, like before even the orientation, but that first ask meeting, I'm bringing the job description and I'm saying, here are your expectations and what we expect from you.
Debbie, would you speak from the board member perspective on what it's like sitting across the table as you're being recruited and what your expectations are? What do you want to hear from the executive director?
I think it's important that as a board member, I spend my time with the organization that's going to respect my time. I'm in the workplace, I'm not retired. And I think when I was retired, because I was retired for a while, that my time, I had a lot more to give than I do now that I'm working. So there's a balance there, and I want that to be appreciated, whether I'm working or not. I am attracted to boards where I know that they got it going on. They are well organized, they can produce reports and financials, and they can explain them and what they're doing and why. That's the short answer.
Great. Would one of you talk to us about what a comprehensive orientation looks like for new board members? What do you do with them? How do you get them up to speed?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we'll be happy to stand. So Children First Communities and Schools has regular informational tours, and in an ideal world, everybody that we're being asked to come on the board would have already attended one of those tours. That doesn't always happen, but that's kind of the ideal. So either we incorporate the tour into their orientation, and then, or we know they've already been on it. So in the orientation that I'm talking about is kind of the full orientation versus the ask, because we go in, myself and another board member, to make the ask, and we go over a lot there, but we want to make sure that they understand what they're getting into before they say yes. And at the end of that, I'm like, do you need to think about it, because I want you to be sure that before you say yes to come on our board. And so then at the board orientation, it's myself, some staff, and other board members, and it's being really clear about, it's giving an overview of the organization, but most of them should have already been on a tour or involved in some way, whether it's finance, special event committee, something. So they've got some kind of overview of what we do. But we're also really clear on what their expectations are, going through the bylaws. And I'll admit that it's not as fun as I would like it to be. So I'm always trying to figure out how to make bylaw review more fun. Versus just saying, go to the website. But so it's looking at, making sure they understand what the bylaws are, what their expectations of them as a board. We go over our finances. I have moved from here are a whole lot of numbers to here are some really pretty charts. And if you want more information, I'm happy to share. But I get a lot of glazed looks when I give them the lot of numbers. And so we've got a strong finance committee that trusts. So we've moved more towards charts. We talk a lot about fundraising, and then our organization does a lot of public policy advocacy. So that's definitely a piece of teaching or educating them about our values, principles, policy directions, and what our expectations are around that. Did I miss any bit?
That's good.
Do you all have anything else to add that you do differently?
Well, I would agree that by the time somebody's a board member, I like to have seen them be a committee member and a volunteer, something, so that they get to know the organization, but that we get to know if they're the real deal. If
People in the back can't see.
I don't want to stand up.
Is it working? Is it working yet? Hello?
Well, that's what I was going to say anyway.
I can hear you when it's closed. I don't know if people back there can, but
Yes.
As a person who's been asked to be on a board, I want to know that why they want me there. What is it you need me to do? So then when I go to board orientation and there's all these other people there, I want to see how it all fits together. Assuming I didn't have an overall view of the organization beforehand, by the time I leave that orientation, I hope I know.
In everybody's organization, is it mandatory, the orientation?
Ours is.
Yeah.
Do you do makeups if someone can't attend, or do you schedule, assuming that all folks are going to attend at one time?
Ideally, everybody attends one, but if not, we are respectful of time and we'll do a makeup.
How long is your orientation?
Just depends. It depends upon, it depends upon how familiar they are, what they've done, if they've been on committees, if they volunteer, that kind of thing. Just depends upon what you need to have done. What do they need so that they know about you?
One of the things we added last year, we do, it's probably about 2 hours orientation, and then I did it right before a finance committee meeting, and part of their orientation was to go to a finance committee meeting. Because not everybody's on the finance committee, but every board member has to understand financial reports. And we got great feedback about doing that, so that at least once they kind of sat through the meeting, saw the reports. So I like that.
Terrific. As we move into boards and fundraising, we've recruited them, we've started the orientation process and the training process. As you move into thinking about fundraising, do you incorporate any type of training on ethics? This is AFP after all, and Alex has his Got Ethics t-shirt. Do you incorporate ethics and donor bill of rights, anything that is really important to AFP and those of us as AFP members, into what you're doing? It's okay.
Well, dead silent. Go ahead.
I mean, Amanda said it was okay, so I will say that we probably don't as much as we should, and it's more of a situation by situation. A board member will say, hey, can we do this, or why don't we do this, and then we'll talk about conflict of interest or ethics or whatever the situation may be, why we can or can't do something. So yeah, I'll own it. We don't do it as much as we should.
Now, I know the code of ethics and the principles are in the packet, the orientation packet, and we talk about that at orientation. We probably could do a better job. I mean, every year we're in a hospital, so we do a thing on HIPAA, donor confidentiality and all that stuff, and we probably could do a better job of revisiting that every year with the board.
So with your board members, they're on board, they're ready, they're getting to know the folks that have been on the board. Talk to us about what you're doing with fundraising. What are the expectations of your individual board members in terms of fundraising? What are their tasks? Go for it, Ruth.
They have to give. There's not a set amount, but you have to ask them to give. If you're there and you're not giving money, then why are you there? That doesn't make any sense. What do they do? We ask them for call-a-thons. They were, board members are our campaign chairs. They work on committees of that sort. Marisa does a great job. We do an education piece every board meeting about fundraising and about what campaign is and what's going on. Messaging is really important. We're changing the way we're messaging things. So we have an education session on that. We do the 30-second talk, and you do the 2-minute elevator speech. We rehearse those, and we make sure that they're looking at that kind of thing as far as fundraising is concerned. We've had some great success with call-a-thons with board members and with writing campaigns too. A handwritten note that says please give is very important. Did I leave anything out, Marisa? Help me. Okay.
You take them to training.
I'm sorry?
You take them to training.
Yeah, it depends upon, we go to annual convention and those kinds of things, of course, yeah. So, you don't get away without, you don't get a pass just because you're a board member on the fundraising side.
That's a great question, Myra. We're going to come back to that one
Good idea.
on here. Any other tasks that you're asking your boards to do for fundraising?
Well, it's just, we really want, when board members are participating in fundraising, for them to use their strengths. I don't want a board member to go on and ask with me if they're afraid of making the ask, because then, you don't want them to be like, oh, it's okay if now's not a good time. You're just like, sit. So if they're not comfortable, don't come. And so we create a menu of opportunities for them to sign up. So if they're not going to write the thank you, we write handwritten thank you letters at every board meeting. And if they're not going to do it, then I don't need to give them to them. So it's like everybody's asked to do something, but they're choosing based on what their strengths are. And I think you all know what those range from. But.
So I can't lie. When I started at the Red Cross, the organization was undergoing some massive change in terms of what board members do, moving from a policy governance board to a true fundraising, community outreach, face of the organization board. And I'm looking at who I have on the list, and there were some phenomenal board members, but none with an extensive amount of fundraising experience. I happened to catch Debbie Rice at a very weak moment as she was leaving Pardee Hospital Foundation and moving to Boys Arnold. So Debbie, I want you to talk to us a little bit about, because you've been on both sides, being a fundraiser, now being a board member, being expected to fundraise, and serving on a variety. She serves on 5 different boards, by the way. A variety of boards where some are policy governance, some are fundraising. Talk to us about some of the activities that you've had some success with as board members.
I would say that as a development person, you cannot assume that your board member is going to write a check. Even if that conversation's been had before they were brought on board, you still have to ask them. And I'm on, one of the boards I'm on is not a fundraising type of board. But it doesn't always occur that I'm asked to write a check, which I find shocking. So I think that's something you can't take for granted from your side of the fence. I remember when I was at Pardee Foundation, I had a board member that was going to invite her neighbor to lunch, and we were going to give him a tour of an orthopedic center that we were renovating. We practiced making that phone call 3 times because it was way outside her comfort level. It was her idea, but we practiced 3 times. So when you have a board member that, I think the one-on-one hand-holding training, which is very time-consuming, but for some people that works best, and you'll get them more success out of it. When Amanda reached out to me to serve on her Red Cross board, she pulled out some great tricks. So one of them was the founder of the company I worked for served on the Red Cross board 30-something years ago. I'm like, oh, well, wow. So, you know, how do you turn that down? And it was a way to bring honor to his legacy and to keep our firm involved and yada, yada, yada. What was the other part?
I asked a lot there. What else did she do to get you?
She was really clever in raising my gift. I gave the standard board gift. There's been a lot of discussion in the past, especially when I was at Pardee, whether or not to have a contract for your board members or not. I don't think you have to go there if you've had the right conversation, which these ladies were talking about that you have long before they agreed to come to their first meeting. I don't think a contract's necessary, but open discussion is very, very important. And so my gift was like $1,000 one year, and she says, well, why don't we just do $100 a month the next year? And I, off the top of my head, I said, sure. And then I realized, damn, that's $1,200.
And all of my returning board members fell for it. I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
I don't think that's bad.
Infinitely easier to just call and say, hey, listen, I'm on the board, I just wanted to thank you for your gift. And 9 times out of 10, the person is waiting for the and it doesn't come. So the board now, they all do it. They're all giving us great feedback. They love doing it because it's a very positive thing. So I think it's made it easier now to transition to a different kind of phone call, a different kind of conversation. And then this year, we've used 3 of our lunch and learns. We have a half hour before every board meeting, and we do a little educational piece. And I actually brought a consultant in to do 3 sessions on developing a solicitation list so that each board member is working with 3 real names as this exercise, but 3 real names that they're working with. The second homework assignment was to make the first call. So I think that's been very productive because I now have a list of at least 40 new prospects from this 3-month exercise. And it was real, and they did it, and I think it's been very affirming for them that they can do this. So it's been good. So now Alex has more work to do.
Actually, one thing that we've done at the Red Cross, we have a major gifts committee, and we meet pretty regularly. We ran into some challenges around December of what is a major gift? Are we doing things the right way? So I actually called Alex and said, would you come to this meeting and just kind of sit back. I know that's going to be hard, and kind of watch. And are we doing things right? Am I leading the conversation the right way? Are the board members that are on the committee engaged in the right way? And then had him help walk us through some of that during the meeting after he had had a feel for it. And I think ultimately that was really helpful for a number of our committee members who were there to say, oh, we are doing things really well, we're doing things right, but also that independent perspective of here's some things that you could be doing and some tips to offer as well. So don't be afraid, in my opinion, to engage, you know, a third party perspective to help motivate your board members and to train them. Sometimes that's all it takes, is that outside perspective, which we could have been preaching for months, that they can come in and say, oh, you're doing this great, or here's some tips.
Can I add something to that?
Uh-huh.
I would also add that you talked about a menu of options for board members, and I think that's really important because as you're building your matrix of what types of people that you need, what skill sets you're looking for on your board, because you don't want 20 people or however many that all look alike. You need people that have financial expertise, people that have legal expertise. You need people that have fundraising expertise or abilities, that are well connected in your community. Whatever your deal is that you need to fill all those spots. And I think you have to understand their personality type. So your financial person might be really good at talking to people but has no idea what to say, or they're real introverted and that's not their gig. Well, they might love to take home some thank you note cards and sit in their pajamas in front of the TV at night and write thank you notes. So I love the option of being able to fit into what, I have this other job, how do I fit in my service to your organization in my real world? And what really works for me. Some months I can go out on calls. Some months I need to sit in my pajamas and write thank you notes. So I think if you know your board members well and you can be real flexible with them, you're going to get more out of them.
Thanks. So,
Question.
Linda.
Quick question along that line. Much is made of the role of board members in opening doors, and I'm wondering if there are a few different tips that you might give in terms of the ways that you work with your board members to do that with and for you.
Well, part of my response to that would be, I do find it easier if you kind of seed the conversation a little bit instead of a blank piece of paper and say, just give me 3 names. I think sometimes it's easier to come with a list of names and say, does anybody know any of these folks? Or foundation connections, do we as a group, anybody have a connection to any of these organizations? I think sometimes, because a board member comes with a whole lot of other things in their head and other time constraints and other things that were going on right before they walked in the door, and I think if we can help them kind of get their head in the moment by giving them some things to react to, I guess is what I'm saying, or names that might be, and then that just starts a process. Oh yeah, I don't know them, but oh, I forgot, I know I could make a call over here, or I could set up an appointment with this company. I think if we can help grease the wheels a little bit, I think that helps. I think that's our job to do that.
I would recommend, from the fundraiser point of view, when you have an event, for example, and your board member has a table or brings people, you make dang sure you meet those people, because that's their passive way of introducing people to your organization.
To add on to Kim, at our board meetings and major gift meetings, we come in with a list of donors who have given, maybe not yet, and then prospects on the corporate and individual side, and have the board members look at them, say, I know them, I don't know them, and then I nail them down with, okay, if you know them, give me some dates and times that you have available in the next 2 weeks. Hold those times, and then either my assistant or I get on the phone with those donors and schedule the meeting, and then send a meeting request to the board member. And I have yet to have a board member bail on me on any of those. As soon as we nail them down, get them there, and those have been the most successful visits that I've had is when the board members do go. Anything else? Question? Herb?
One of the things that you may find helpful to do is, a lot of the civic clubs have a classification system where they don't want to, they have so many people they can recruit, they don't want everybody, so they have a classification system. And I find that if you evaluate your current boards, choose your criteria first of all. You work with your board development, find out what are you going to hold as important: age, geography, gender, their industry they're working in, their occupation, are they an alumnus of your organization or not, those sorts of things, and then prioritize those as best you can, and then overlay your existing board members on that matrix and see where the gaps are, where are the shortfalls we need to fill in, and then you've got something to go to your board members to say, here's what we're looking for. We're looking for minority women that live in the Winston-Salem area, for example. That helps them to target. If they live close to that area, then there's some onus on them to try to infiltrate their network to identify those folks and come back with some viable board members, people who have already served on boards, who have experience. We don't want to have a training ground. We have orientation, but we're looking for experienced people, hit the ground running.
Great, thank you. Annie?
I just also want to plug that the chapter is going to have a couple of opportunities for learning for board members. One is going to be how to read a profit and loss statement and how to read financials. And it's going to be offered here at Lunch and Learn in a non-threatening manner. And so if you would invite your board members to come, we'll help teach them that kind of stuff. And then you can have a post-orientation or whatever you might want to do. And also we're going to do one on the 990s. So look to the chapter to help provide some of that general training. And if there's other training you need from us, please let us know.
If you want real training, you need to come to Rising Leaders. We have a Rising Leaders group in Henderson County through United Way. We have graduated now 50-some people? 50?
About
60? Okay. We went after young people originally. We found out that that's expanded a little bit. It's a 6 education course. It's 2 hours over lunch 6 times a year. We just graduated 17 last Thursday. We had 20 nonprofit agencies doing a speed, and Bill's shaking his head because he was there and was excited about it, doing a speed match, a speed dating, if you will. And some of those folks were ready to drag those graduates right out of there and put them on board because of what we've done. Governance, responsibilities, 990, financial statements, help me. Robert's Rules of Orders, fundraising.
Knowing and appreciating your passion and
Yep, figuring out what you need to do.
finding your inspiration.
Yeah, there's probably 6 or 7 guest speakers that come and do that, all professionals in their area. So that's a great opportunity, and it's all funded by Friday Staffing. So it's no cost to the people who come and do that. So that's a great way to do that, and then this is a good way too to get people who are already there and then comfortable. So yeah, we talked to the nonprofits, and they said we would really love to have young people. We talked to young people, and they said we don't know anything about this. So we put it together 3 years ago, and it's been incredibly successful. And thank you for sharing.
Thanks for sharing that. And y'all, please don't knock over Larissa and Ruth on your way out to find out who those people are.
Oh, I got their names. You're too late. I got them all.
So back to our tongue-in-cheek title, How to Kill Your Board. Inevitably, there's going to be lousy board members. It happens, by and large, not really to any fault of their own. They may get busy, may say, this isn't really the organization I want to be helping, and they don't know how to leave. How have you blessed and released those board members? And you can share examples, stories are always good.
Names.
Okay, confident she's a fundraiser.
Well, I haven't done it here.
Yeah.
I have no need to do it here. But in another life, in another organization, I had a couple of board members along the way that were not just difficult, but doing damage. And that's the difficult ones, you kind of figure out a way to work with them and do whatever you need to do. But the ones that do damage are in trouble. I believe that if a board member is not living up, if you've laid out expectations very clearly at the beginning, so that there's no misunderstanding about what they're doing there, and they've signed on to do it, and they're not doing that, then just like a kid, they're acting out because they want to get out of it. So I think it's on us to pay attention to that and give them a gracious way to step out. I think that's when having bylaws, having term limits, and those are your best friends in situations like that, because you can fall back on that. One of the things I've always done and really enjoyed doing is really having a report card. And at the end of every year, develop it at the beginning so everybody buys into it. These are the things we're going to track this year. And then last year, at the end of the year, we met with all of our board members to look at the report card, assess kind of how they felt about the year. Were they plugged into the right thing? Would they rather be involved with something else? And I think it gives them the opportunity at that point to say, no, this isn't working for me. I got really busy at work. Whatever the excuse is a chance to have a candid conversation about that and let them move on. I also one time had a very difficult conversation, and I think it's on the board chair to do this, not us. It's not our job. It's the board chair's person, but sometimes you have to, that's a fellow volunteer, so that can be very awkward. But I think you have to do that together, and we actually had to tell somebody that they needed to leave. And it was very difficult. They were angry. We lost a donor, but I don't think the gift part of it should ever be the reason to keep somebody on the board who's trouble, because it starts to poison. You start to lose good board members. You know, if you've got somebody who's making a board meeting miserable month after month after month, you're going to have good board members say, I don't need this. I've got this at work. Why am I doing this with mine? But in my volunteer life, I don't need that agony. And so to lose good people over that one bad person, isn't it a better choice to move that bad person out of there?
On the evaluation side, you might want to do an independent evaluation and then have other board members evaluate the entire board. I think that's a great idea. That's what we're looking at doing right now.
A self-evaluation?
You do a self-evaluation and then you do an evaluation of your fellow board members as a whole.
Mark?
Yeah, just as a follow-up to what Kim said, and also as a question to other folks, I facilitated the webinar we had a month or two ago about boards, and Simone Joyot was saying that her recommendation that she makes, which I hadn't heard anything like this before, it sounded great, was to have the nominating committee sort of function as a evaluative body during the year. And she was saying, I always thought, well, you said your board chair is the one who needs to step up and have that conversation. And she was saying this group should sort of, during the year, be talking to people if they miss a couple meetings in a row or something like that happens. And I was wondering, Kim said, be her and the board chair. I was wondering for other folks on the panel if, who has that conversation, and if you have something kind of during the year between evaluations like that, that happens.
Well, that's actually a good idea, because they're the ones that are responsible for that person being a board member, because they somehow nominated them, and I think that's a great idea.
Marilyn?
I wanted to mention, I know someone had spoken about having like a contract or something like that in place, and I know as a serving on boards, it's always nice to get an annual participation form, because it kind of reminds me, oh yeah, it's time to write my check. It's time to think about what other things I can donate to this organization, whether it be additional time or resources or copy paper or copying services, those types of things. But I also know when I was serving on the other side as an executive director, that document for me was great because it reminded me of all the talents that these board members were providing. And it was also a good contract that I could always refer to if I needed to. So it's interesting to see it from both sides. It's a good reminder.
Thank you. All right, we have 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask Debbie to answer the question. How do executive directors and development directors kill board members? What are some of your pet peeves? What can we do better to enhance the board member experience?
That's tough.
Well, there might be people out here too.
Yeah, do we have people who have served on boards? What do executive directors and development directors do to kill board members? What can we do to enhance the experience? I see Marcia and her both. Go ahead, Marcia.
I serve on a startup board that is, we're still growing as a board and everything, and the executive director sometimes will send me emails with projects she wants me to do and deadlines like today or tomorrow that I didn't sign up for. And I understand where it's coming from because she's herself not even paid yet. So, it'd be helpful for me if it was more of a conversation and something I agreed to do rather than something I'm given by email at 8:30 at night that needs to be done in the next 2 days. So, I think that's just a conversation that she and I would be having, but style.
Did y'all hear that? Yeah. Okay.
What I said in the beginning about valuing my time, I think this feeds back into that. I have this other job that I get paid for, and it has to be my priority. Even though I'm passionate about your organization, truly it's not my #1 priority. My home, my family, and my job that pays my salary to keep my lights on, that's really my priority. So I think that's really important to remember that. And when I was on staff, that is hard to remember because you need someone to call you back, damn it. Why did they call you back? So, or show up to a meeting or whatever their story is. And things happen. I think you just have to learn how to work with each of those people individually so that is not a rub. That to me is probably a really important thing.
I have 2 quick thoughts. One is my pet peeve in our office is that a board member doesn't hear from 3 different staff people at the same time about 3 different things. Because I think that's just abuse of a volunteer's time. So we really are trying to be much more organized and focused in terms of what we're doing and who's working with whom, so that they're hearing one message from us. Because I think the message then is, what are those people doing over there? I think the other thing now is we're dealing with different generations of people on a board. And 20-year-olds are a different brand of board member than a 60-year-old. And trying to make all that work in a board setting, I think it's challenging. I think it's something all of us are going to have to deal with as we try to recruit younger board members, but we're trying to squash them into a model that's a model for 70-year-olds. And I think it's something we're really going to have to pay attention to. There's a lot written about, multi-generations in the workplace, but it's the same thing on boards. Karen's running an annual fund committee and trying to bring younger people on it, but they're not meeting people. They don't want to go to meetings. They give me something to do and I'll do it, but I don't really want to come once a month on a Friday at 2 o'clock to a meeting. So I think that's a challenge for us.
Any other comments? Questions?
Honestly, it seems to me that a lot of times we end up shooting ourselves in the foot as a staff member trying to put a board together by putting together a puppet board, you might say. We all know what I'm talking about here. Not giving them anything to do, a specific written job description, and not only the board member expectation job description, I give it to them without the signature initially. So, I give it to the volunteer recruits. Then when they come, we have one that they actually sign. But I think you've got to build ownership first and create an opportunity for them to participate in vision with what your organization is trying to do. Otherwise, it's just a formality for them, and they don't really have any skin in the game because they haven't been a part of creating, the dynamic that you're living now. So in addition to that, I would encourage you to not just have them as a board member, but actually plug them into more than one committee, so that there's specific things that are there are expectations. There's an agenda for that committee year round that's going to be accomplished. There are specific objectives. There's goals, and there are assignments made at every meeting. So they're afraid if they miss a meeting, you know what happens when you miss a meeting. So I think there's got to be buy-in. There's got to be accountability in the back end as well.
Lloyd and Annie.
I think one of the ways to follow up on that, I think one of the ways to do that is to have some kind of plan of action that they approve, that the board approves, in principle. If you know that this is what we're trying to accomplish this year, then your mindset becomes a little more positive, and your relationship with the staff becomes more positive.
That's true, absolutely. I was just going to offer one twist too. I've worked with some clients who have done the recruitment, who've then done the orientation, and then they ask the person to join the board. So they flip them so that the ask is not prior to orientation but after orientation. So they've actually invested time and money, and again, if they don't show up for orientation prior to being asked on board, that's a signal, like a red flag. And then at that point, they say, we know what the expectation is, we've had our orientation, we see our specific role, why they're recruiting me now for this board at this time, and then they sign on the dotted line. And that's actually really engaged them in a deeper way, much faster. So, that's interesting.
It's really interesting. Is anyone doing that? Could you hear Annie? Okay. Any other questions? Erica?
Well, yeah, kind of going along with that, and I've had friends in the community that have been asked to be a part of the board nomination process, and then they're not asked. And so how do you, and maybe they just weren't a right fit at the right time, how do you keep those people engaged without them feeling kind of let down?
Yeah, put them on a committee. Talk about the list that you keep. Yeah, for potential board members, absolutely.
Yeah, because I do think that's a really great comment, because if I've been recruited for a board and then I haven't been able to because of my own personal life, and then I've never heard from them again. Right. It's like, why did you want me then, and all of a sudden I'm no good anymore, or whatever. I was just trying to, I was filling their boxes of gender, age, and whatever.
Yeah.
And they found someone else to fill the boxes, and so they moved on.
Treat them like a donor.
So, it's weird. Yeah. But I'm not sure why you'd have someone on your nominating committee who's not a board member.
They've been nominated to be a board member.
Oh, they're nominated to be on the board.
And then don't get chosen.
They don't get chosen. Yeah.
Sorry.
To address that, what we do, this helpful, but after we recruit, well, after we've identified, we've researched and identified who the person is we want to go after, we make it clear on the front end when our board members goes to meet the suspect at this point, and to find out whether they are indeed a prospect for us. Then we put them on a, we do a follow-up letter, and we reiterate that they've been identified as someone who might serve in this capacity in the future for our board, and that if they are called upon at some point in time, we would like to engage them in further conversation, see if this is a good time for them to serve the term. So we try to give them, we want a feeder board, so to speak, so we've got a place to park them, but we've still got to keep them interested too. So you've got to engage them, bring them on campus, roll out the red carpet, just like they're, a board member, so to speak, but they're not yet in the saddle yet, riding the reins.
Great. Thank you all. Will you join me in thanking our guests? My guess is that they'll stay here to answer a few more questions if you all want to approach them individually.